How do you define success for demand gen, and how do you manage expectations for the client in demand gen? I think for me personally, quite a lot, I have these conversations where I'm saying, early on, we're aiming to drive awareness. These are our primary metrics for awareness, and that's kind of broadly understood. But the conversation always goes back to, well, my ROAS is not as high as I'd like it to be in platform. So my question to you is, how typically would you address that challenge, and how do you define success?
Yeah, it's a tough question. It's a tough topic, right? I think it's easy to state you need awareness and you need to generate upper funnel touch points. You need to make people aware of that product. Conceptually that makes total sense, but in reality, a client still needs to see a return on that. So there is a level of expectation management in that you have to get a client to buy into that concept of this is not for the immediate term. This is to amplify all of your other metrics or your other channels, really. So a big piece of that is an education piece on you will not see this in your platform. In most cases, it's either going to be way outside your attribution window in terms of time, or your attribution capability in terms of visibility. Most of the view touch points that you're going to get in awareness campaigns or reach campaigns are going to be not trackable in a traditional sense. So the way we kind of get around that is to put, they're not particularly comprehensive measures, but they're just viewing things in a different way. So, okay, let's look at your overall business numbers. Let's identify metric sets within those numbers that we can start to determine performance uplifts over time. So for example, we might introduce awareness and cold prospecting campaigns that we are then measuring on, media efficiency ratio, uplift of new customer acquisition, if that's the goal, or whatever the metric set of improvement needs to be. But we're looking at that steadily over a time period to try and identify uplifts or correlation or potentially causation over time. So we're not looking at immediate, platform numbers. This is really tough because, again, you've got to set that expectation with the client. The client has to buy into that. If they're not going to buy into that, and then their mindset isn't around that, it really isn't worth having that fight. In that, you're going to be on totally different, swim lanes, basically. So you do have to kind of think about how you would manage that expectation and how you can get clients to understand that concept. But really, it's all about looking at the business uplift. You and I, for instance, we've been looking at, basic forms of incrementality testing in that we can do geographic holdouts. So we run awareness and cold prospecting campaigns in a particular location or area. And then we hold that out from our other media. So we take any budget out of that, and then we look at the comparative uplift or impact over time. There are tools that can do that for you, which are very, very expensive.
I think this is another kind of point here is from previous experience with these kind of challenges, I would always say, do a brand lift study. What does that say? Do a conversion lift study. What does that say? The problem is with that is typically you're looking at spending at least 15 grand across a 2-week period. And ideally, if you're going to do some sort of experiment, you want to spend more and you want to do it across a larger time period. So
I was going to say, you make a great point in that it is relative to your business size. If you're a £5 million turnover business and you're spending 5k a month and you want to do that exercise there, how are you going to measure that? It's got to be impactful enough on a scale level, like you mentioned.
Yeah, and I think one thing that is a good benefit that we get at SOZO is that we have this really intimate relationship with a lot of small clients and small businesses. And so that means we have to get a little bit more creative with the ways in which we measure. And there's a bit of a double-edged sword to that, of course. We're limited with the budgets, but the budgets that we do apply often paint a clearer picture. I think it's a good idea to kind of go over some of the key things you might look at, whether that's something really basic like just looking at Search Console. Is there an uplift? What's the GA4 traffic looking like? That kind of thing. Are there any other things that you would do from Meta?
It's all of those things. Is your platform data giving you any signal as to it moving in the right direction? And that might be as simple as, if you're doing up a funnel, are you getting high CTRs? Are people resonating with your creative? Are you getting cheaper traffic cost through, but lots more of it? Are you getting engagement on the ad itself? Are you seeing a bit of page engagement off the back of it? I'm not saying necessarily that people aren't going to buy because you're not going to see that, because that could be 30, 60, 90 days in the future in terms of a buying decision, but are you basically seeing the signals at the level that you're at in order to make that decision? And that can help inform, I guess, viability of the delivery over time. If you've got strong creatives, people are resonating with it, you've got lots of engagement, you're doing something right. Not everybody's going to buy, of course, but you're generating the right type of engagement, the right type of awareness. So that's something it's different for every business, but you do kind of have to have that, like what I would call bridging metric sets. So you kind of have links to the next level of metric measurement.
Like this tells us that we're on the right path.
Exactly that.
Those kind of things.
Exactly.